Here is what I want you to think about for a second. You spend decades working with fragrance ingredients. You've read about them, you studied them, but you spend decades actually working with them, extracting oud, blending musk, distilling rose from real petals. You know these things the only way you know something you've actually had your hands in for years. And at some point you decide, I want to build something of my own using these things I've learned, these skills I've acquired. That is the story of Mohamed Iqbal Abdul Sattar, a master perfumer with over 40 years of experience who in 1997 opened a perfume house in Dubai called Khadlaj. He didn't set up in a commercial district. He didn't open up in a mall. He went to the souq Moshid, Dubai's oldest perfume market, a place where fragrance and perfumes have been bought and sold for generations. A place where wholesale and retail sit by side. Like you could walk in on any given morning and smell 10 different oud compositions before you've even had breakfast. Imagine what that does to your craft. To not only have that decade of experience, but to literally set up shop in the place where the tradition has lived the longest, in the place where the history of Arabian fragrance isn't in a book, it's literally in the air you are walking in. You're not just making fragrance. At that point, I think it's like you're absorbing more of the thing you're trying to make every single day just by being there. That is where the perfume house Khadlaj started. That's the foundation it was built on. And I think it's worth it to dive in some more. Let's find out more. This is Arabian Scent Files, the only fragrance series that treats Middle Eastern perfumery as a subject worth studying, not just a place to find cheap alternatives. Every episode goes deeper than the bottle. I'm Chizoba, let's get into it. Now, what Mohamed Iqbal actually built is interesting because it's really hard to put in a box. And I think based on what I've found so far, I think that's intentional. We'll see where we land after we explore the perfume house Khadlaj. So far, there are three things that live in the Khadlaj catalog that most people don't talk about in the same conversation. Their most famous fragrance is Hareem Al Sultan. And we're gonna get to that story in a little bit. It's a really good one. Their most acclaimed traditional composition is Oud Pure. It's a high concentration oud that sits right in the heart of what this founder spent 40 years building and tinkering with. And funny enough, one of their most celebrated creations isn't even a spray fragrance. It's Bukhor Al Bahar. It's an incense blend that's deeply beloved in the Arabian region, and it's starting to find its audience internationally too. I often see ads for it and videos for it when I'm scrolling around on TikTok. Essentially, the incense blend is becoming a global fragrance phenomenon. Well, Harim Al Sultan is a global fragrance phenomenon. They sold 10 million plus bottles of it. You have their serious traditional oud, and then you have this incense blend. And so you're talking about one perfume house that has the same catalog, has the same founder, but different parts of it. And so if you're sitting trying to figure out what Khadlaj is supposed to be, that's why it's difficult to answer quickly because it's so many different things. When Mohamed Iqbal opened Khadlaj, he came up with a phrase, or he had a phrase for what he was doing. He called it Oriental meets Occident, meaning the marriage between the tradition he came from and the Western perfumery he wanted to speak to. He didn't want to choose one over the other. He wanted to build something where they could both meet. And that might be a big reason why it's difficult to define Khadlaj and say this is exactly what it does or doesn't do. Mohamed Iqbal didn't build Khadlaj and hand it to a corporation. It's actually a family business, a family perfume house. So far, it stayed in the family. His son, Asif Mohamed Iqbal Kachi, leads the house now. He grew up inside what his father built. He's been in the business for 18 years now. And what he has done with that inheritance from his father is he's taken the house global without well, trying not to lose what made it worth taking anyway. Try not to lose what his father has built or the unique conversation his father wanted to have with Western perfumery and the Arabian perfume culture. Under Asif's leadership, Khadlaj has expanded to more than 83 countries. They have 20 luxury showrooms across the UAE and Oman. It has a digital presence that has introduced the house to people who will never walk through the souk moshed, but have found a Khadlaj bottle anyway. So far, the kind of growth that Khadlaj has had can be easy to it will be easy for most businesses that grow that way to become hollow, where you're expanding so quickly and you lose sight of the founder's vision. And it happens when businesses start to grow, especially when the original owner is probably or the original founder is not as active as it is in the business. It can be very easy for a business to lose its way. Actually, if you start focusing on profits, I mean, every business wants to be profitable, but when the profit leads the vision, you have situations like ingredients being swapped for cheaper versions, or a craft that simply becomes a logo. It's no longer a practice. I like to think that this hasn't happened with Khadlaj, at least not yet. The woodwork is still in the catalog, the rose is still in the formulas, the Oriental meets Occident conversation Mohamed Iqbal wanted to have feels like it's still the frame everything is currently being built around. What his son Asif brought is rich, making it go farther, but his father built the foundation. So I referenced their most famous fragrance, Hareem Al Sultan. Let's tell the story. Between 2011 and 2014, a Turkish historical drama called Magnificent Century took over television across the Arab world. It aired there under a different name, Hareem Al Sultan, the Sultan's Harem. It's a story that is set inside the Ottoman imperial courts, specifically about the women inside it, their power, their beauty, their influence in a world that tried to reduce them to their surroundings. Now, let me confess, I came across this drama, I don't know, maybe in 2012, 2013, before it finished. Well, I take that back. I came across the drama after it had finished because I remember watching all of it, so I wasn't waiting for episodes to drop. I think definitely after it had aired, but just before COVID was when I came across it. I was hooked. I was hooked. I'm a fan of the show. I'm pretty certain I've watched it twice. There are certain arcs and segments that were my favorite, and characters I love, characters I did not like. Definitely characters were just it's an emotional journey. It's very long, very lengthy. After all, it aired for what is it, 3 4 years. Beautiful, beautiful, visually beautiful. The story really arresting, made me really interested in the Ottoman Empire, and also with the Sultan or the ruler whose reign was captured in the drama. The drama reached 200 million viewers across more than 50 countries. Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Iraq, wherever, everybody watching the same story at the same time and completely caught up in it. Like I can only imagine watching it while it was airing. I remember I came across it after it was done, and it was still there were still communities at the point I came across it years later who were still discussing the drama like it's new. There were countries that were getting it after it had aired in the Arab world. And it was new to those audiences and it kept sparking the conversation. While all of this was happening, Khadlaj was paying attention. Mohammed Iqbal, for the years of oud, musk, rose, and Arabian composition, traditional Arabian composition, he paid attention to what was happening culturally and decided to build a fragrance for the moment. A fragrance that would capture both domestic and international audiences and would pay homage to the drama and the time period that was being discussed. He wanted to build something that was light, accessible, a warm, spicy floral that forgives a heavy hand and that would work in any weather because the audience watching live in different climates. In a way, he kind of understood what the show was actually about, not necessarily the palace itself, the structure, but the women in it. And he built something that they could wear, something that did not demand expertise to appreciate, something that didn't require you to already love something like love oud before it works on your skin. The fragrance he came up with was Hareem Al Sultan. The most famous version of that fragrance is Hareem Al Sultan Gold. I own the perfume oil and the fragrance. That fragrance has sold over 10 million bottles. Like, it went viral before going viral was even the phrase for it. And it opened the door to Khadlaj for an audience where traditional oud compositions would never have reached them, because we hear oud and we run away. That is a master perfumer who understood the times, understood the audience well enough to aim his craft exactly where he needed to go. We will explore that fragrance some more, but it's not one, it's one that you can smell and see the Arab fragrance tradition, but it doesn't have a heavy oud presence. At least it didn't on my skin when I tried it. And so I hope now we have a fuller sense of the perfume house that is Khadlaj, built by a master perfumer, located in the oldest perfume market in Dubai, rooted in traditional Arabian ingredients, reaching deliberately toward a global audience, and adopting Oriental meets Occident as its actual operating philosophy. If I'm being honest, when I went looking for the traditional side of Khadlaj, testing, like I deliberately bought some perfume bottles, testing an oud composition instead of just staying in the gourmand and accessible register, what I found was something in between. So I found a perfume or a fragrance like Oud Noir that has agar wood, but also has raspberry and rose that was pulling it towards sweet. Like, you feel the oud, it's there, but it shared the space with the fruits and the rose in a direction that I really didn't want. But I thought about the phrase, Oriental meets Occident. The instinct or the philosophy toward meeting people partway. So it's not just showing up in gourmands and the crossover fragrances. It runs through the whole house. Now, how you take to it is very subjective. One man's obsession with fruity florals is this lady's abhorrence of fruity florals. But if you look at it objectively, I think that Oriental meets Occident philosophy is present, very present in a lot of Khadlaj perfumes. Even in compositions or fragrances that are supposed to be firmly in the traditional register, Khadlaj leaves a door open. Whether that's a good feature or a limitation depends entirely, I think, on what you're looking for when you walk through. For someone who's never worn oud and needs somewhere to start with Middle Eastern perfumery, the door is everything, because it's Khadlaj makes some really accessible Middle Eastern fragrances. For someone who's already been who's already dabbled and likes the most intense of ouds like Amir Al Oud and wants to go deeper, Khadlaj might leave you wanting more. But both of those things can be true at the same time. It might leave you wanting more, but you might very well find what you're looking for there. We'll see. So in part 3, we'll go through some specific bottles, how they performed on my skin, what my honest verdicts are on what Khadlaj does when you give it your full attention. I will see you there.